In 1971, I was working for Al Gribaldo with a company called Earth Systems in the Bay Area. And Earth Systems decided that they wanted to have an office in San Diego. And so they purchased a small testing laboratory and incorporated Geocon, named me the president. And for the first few months between September and December, I commuted by air. And after the first of the year in 1972, I moved to San Diego to run Geocon full-time. For the next couple of years, we tried hard to expand the company. I hired Herb Maines as my primary technical assistant. And by the time July of 1974 came around, we were beginning to get our head above water. However, there was an economic downturn in that year that necessitated that Earth Systems divest themselves of branch offices or branch corporations. So at that time, I went out and got a second deed of trust on my house, and Herb borrowed some money from his mom, and we bought Geocon from Earth Systems for, I believe, $5,000, which was the book value of the assets at the time. From that point forward, we began to make a little progress here and there. We quickly realized that we were rather severely lacking in geologic expertise. So I approached Mike Hart, who then was working for Kruscos and Associates, and Mike agreed to come into the company as a one-third owner, put in a few bucks, and so Mike and Herb and I were each one-third owners. We continued along that path for a few years, continued to grow, and in 1977, Tom Langpap approached us. He was at Southern Cal at the time and was anxious to move from that company, either to set up his own company or to become involved with a growing company such as ours. And so we agreed that Tom would come in. Tom also put in some money, and we became one quarter, I think that's four, and continued to expand relatively slowly. In those days, we were located on Convoy Court. As we got somewhat bigger in 1981, perhaps, we outgrew our Convoy Court address, bought a tilt-up building on Dottie Drive, went through the necessary tenant improvements, moved in there, probably late 81 or so, still the four equal partners. In 1982, there was an economic downturn where we lost a bunch of money, and at that time we decided to have Herb leave the company. He didn't think that was a very good idea. We negotiated back and forth, and the net result was that Herb agreed to sell a portion of his ownership, so we would have the ability to bring in associate owners. And Tom and Mike and I would each retain 25%. Herb would have 10%, and the associates would have the remaining 15%. That's when we brought Tom Cooper, Kent Zender, and Wes Spang into the company. We gradually got out of that recession in 1982, and in 1983, when Woodward Clyde dropped out of the residential land development business, we began doing a lot of residential work. We continued to grow. We brought in Mike Williams. Rory Johnston came in, began doing environmental work, and we soon outgrew our Dowdy Drive address to the point that we moved Mike's accounting operation and Rory's environmental operation to a separate suite across the street. So at that time we decided that we needed to get a bigger space. We struck a deal with Topmark, Steve Delaney and Dick Farrell, and built the existing location that we're in on Flanders. Moved into Flanders in February of 1989, and that started another period of extensive growth. Brought in some new associates. Tom Cooper left the company. Wes Spang left the company. Wes, of course, rejoined us a number of years later. And we continued to grow very quickly and into the late 80s, early 90s. And then the great turn down of 91 to 95 occurred. We lost a lot of money. We ultimately went into and out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, went into it in June of 93, came out in March of 95, and that started a period of sustained growth that lasted until I retired at the end of the year 2000, and Tom began his wind down, which he started at the end of 1999, that lasted for a number of years. By that time, our growth pattern had continued to evolve. We had brought in a number of additional shareholders. In the late 90s, aware of the fact that we needed to have effective management transition, we hired Mike Chapin, who had worked for us for 11 years and then had been gone for 11 years, as our CEO designate, assuming that in his probationary period that he would meet the approval of the other employees and the other partners, which he did very easily. And so at the end of the year 2000, I retired, and after that, the company was on their own, and they did very, very well. And I decided that it was due to one of two things: either that that I had put a really good transition team together, or they finally got rid of the dead weight. And I assumed it was because of the brilliant management transition program.